A lot of my friends have either ended up in jail or dead. Crazily enough, last week, my childhood best friend, his son, got shot at 17 years old and killed at the same bus stop that I was sitting at when I had the realization that I wanted to get out. That was me that just got killed in Vegas.
You're listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to championing everyday men and supporting you in getting more from life, love, and the everyday. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and the aim of this podcast is pretty simple: to support you in building rock-solid foundations, legendary integrity, and kick-ass relationships, with plenty of stories, a load of lessons, and a solid dose of some loving straight talk. So let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. This is me, your host, Mike Campbell. If you're new, welcome. And if you're returning, hey, welcome back. Great to have you here. Today, I'm bringing on a guest, a friend of mine, Mr. Brandon Collinsworth. Brandon is, when do you even start to describe this dude? Like, he's one of these dudes who is extremely positive while most definitely not being in the world of bypassing all the uncomfortable shit in his life. In fact, he's a man who has been through a ton of shit, and we talk about a lot of that in this episode, from growing up in the projects and poverty in East Las Vegas to having some pretty fucking terrible, like, holy shit, your life is potentially going to spiral habits, to some realizations at a pretty significant age, and then kind of where that took him and where he's got to now in his life. A master's of positive psychology, a dope human who does dope things, and some wonderful experiences and stories, and some of which we get into, and also leading these things called warrior retreats down in Peru. Brandon is such a joy to be around, and his approach and take on things is so wonderful and enlightening, and also I think it is contagious. Yeah. And I've been fortunate to be in a men's group with Brandon for some time now, and was fortunate to catch up with him and meet him in person for real in real life, RIL, late November last year, 2022, in Hawaii, when me and him and the men in our group got together. Today's show, we actually got to sit down for the first time, proper one-on-one, and dive in deep, which was awesome, because I got to actually learn a lot more about Brandon and his story, which we get into, and we explore a lot of the things that he went through, but the lessons that came out of that, and kind of where and how he's got to this point in his life now, again, from some pretty hardcore situations to some of the most phenomenal experiences and situations he gets into now. This is a dude whose network, I don't know, he will just pop out with like, oh yeah, I got a guy for this, I got a guy for that. And he's not that dude who's like, oh yeah, sure. He is. And it's surreal and fun to be around. In fact, like, legit right now, I just got a pair of brand new Nikes turn up in the post from Brandon, just because he's a dope dude. He does dope shit, and he looks after his friends by just getting them a gift. Just because I love that idea and the practice of it. I talked about it today on my social media sometime in the past, depending on when you listen to this. Either way, there's an insight and a window, an introduction into Mr. Brandon Collinsworth. Like, subscribe, stick around, hi, all the things. Give us a rating, give us a review. That helps us so much get this podcast in front of more men who could like it, benefit from it, use it, potentially monumentally change their life with one step. Who knows what they could do from listening to this little episode. So let's get into it. Hey, a quick message from me before we get into this episode. You might not know this, but about 3/4 of the people who listen to this podcast haven't yet hit the follow button. Now, if you have got anything from this podcast, if you enjoy it, if it helps you in the past, my ask, my request, my suggestion is come and hit that follow button. Then not only will you get access to episodes first, but also it means it will get in front of more people. The bigger the show gets, the bigger the guests get, and the more men that we can support. So hit that follow button and enjoy this episode. Brandon Collinsworth, welcome to the Everyday Legends podcast, brother. Good to have you here, finally.
It is an honor to finally be able to drop in with you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Just took us, the different time zones and the travels and the B's amazing, wonderful, eccentric schedule. No, it's great to have you here, bro. And yeah, we've found ourselves in a more similar time zone. So for, I've had the beautiful privilege, I think, of meeting you, getting to know you over the last little while as you have entered into our men's group. And, you were one of those guys that I had seen your content, and then had the likes of Mark, our mutual friend, like nudge your stuff in our general direction. And then obviously he introduced you to our group, and it's been a joy to get to know you, spend a bit of time with you. I imagine some of the people who follow me don't know who you are. Perhaps they've maybe come across you. So I want to kind of dive into a little bit of the let's get to know you. But the question I got for you is one you can take wherever you want. It's a question that I like to ask. There's no end to perhaps where you can take that, and that is this: who is Brandon Collinsworth?
Great question. And if I go really esoteric, the answer to that is it's beyond the known. We really have no idea who any of us are. But when I drop into my mind, I I start with the list of brother, son, businessman, passionate, entrepreneur, and I think the title that I hold most dearly is humanitarian, and a man who is in service to others, in service to this planet, and in service to my legacy, to leave this world better than I found it, and to lay the foundation so that my next generation and the generations after me are standing on something healthy and non-toxic. I really pride myself on being a bridge to end the cycles of poverty and the cycles of negativity and the cycles of depression and anxiety and toxic behaviors. I really take pride in being the end to that. And in taking that role upon myself, I had no idea how hard it would be, and at the same time, how worth it is. And so being here, I'm a steward of love. And as a lot of people who follow me see, love is my mission. And I was told one time that if my mission is not bigger than me, or if my mission is not so big that I probably will never be able to achieve it, it's not big enough. And so I'm here to be that steward of love and steward of heart towards my brothers, my sisters, and humanity as a whole.
Oh, man. How's that for an introduction? I love that. And man, I see that and I witness that, and I want to dive into that a little bit as well in terms of that mission. But you spoke there to a few things, and one of those being, about like I'm choosing to end these cycles. Where does that come about? What's the origins of that piece there?
Yeah. So I was born on the east side of Las Vegas, and a lot of people, when they hear about Las Vegas, they think of neon lights, they think of the hotels, they think of all the things that Vegas is known for. They don't think of Vegas as poverty. They don't think of Vegas as the projects. They don't think of Vegas as one of the worst school districts in the entire United States. And the truth is growing up in the projects on the east side of Las Vegas, the chances of you making it out, especially if you're young, Black, single parent household, coming from a household that has no educational background, the chances of one making it out are next to impossible. In fact, if you just make it to baseline, if you just make it to average, that's considered a success. Anything beyond that, there's no example to be found. And so growing up on the east side of Las Vegas with my mom and my little sister, I was introduced to life's hardships at a very young age. And I was introduced to poverty, and I was introduced to the challenge, and I was introduced to a lot of different fears that have presented themselves in many different ways as I walked my path. One of the gifts, though, that was given to me of growing up in the projects was resiliency, was grit, was the power of gratitude, was the power of intuition, was the power of street smarts. And one of the greatest gifts my mother gave me was the love of books. I didn't realize that her teaching me to read at 4 years old with Dr. Seuss books would translate into a love of reading that 14 years later, when I was 18 years old and I was sitting at a bus stop, high school dropout, broke, my whole entire life spinning out of control, addicted to alcohol, my friends getting killed, locked up, or worse. Like, I had no idea there would be books that would be my salvation, but it was there where I re-engaged my love of learning, and my love of expanded me in ways I couldn't have imagined. It opened up the pathway out of Vegas, beyond the neon lights, and into the world of my potential, into the world of my dreams. And that's really been the journey I've been on the last 20 years. It's been 20 years since I sat at that bus stop and I decided and I declared that I was going to, if I was going to die on the streets, I was going to at least try to get out. I was willing to die to get out of my circumstances. And that's been the journey I've been on. And it's been the greatest journey I've ever could have gone on. A lot of my friends have either ended up in jail or dead. Crazily enough, last week, my childhood best friend, his son, got shot at 17 years old and killed at the same bus stop that I was sitting at when I had realization that I wanted to get out. That was me that just got killed in Vegas. So the very fact that I've been able to make it out of Vegas, let alone into the positions I'm in, I take it very seriously, and understand that I've been given a great responsibility. Like, call it universe, call it Allah, Buddha, great spirit, divine mother, whatever that is, it somehow protected me and gave me a 1 in a million opportunity to live beyond what my circumstances were. And this is why I'm so passionate about my mission, is because I truly see it as a gift. I truly recognize that what I've been given is a gift, and it is my duty to heal not only my family lineage, but also to heal all the people that I come in contact with that are struggling and fighting their own battles. And what I'm realizing the more and more that I go on this journey is not everybody has to grow up in the projects. Sometimes it's you put up in a situation where there's just not love in the household. Sometimes you come from a lot of money, but there's abuse in other ways. We all are fighting our own battles. And so I'm here as a testament to say, whatever that battle is you're fighting, trust that you have the tools, and that if you have a dream and a vision, that is the roadmap to transcending and going beyond any circumstances you might face.
Whew, beautiful. Holy shit, man. This, you share that with us in terms of your friend's son, and it's so heavy and so sad. And, connecting back to that bus stop, like, whoa, what for you, what happened? You said, like, there was a decision. So what was it about that moment in time at that bus stop that shifted things, but certainly by the sound of it, shifted it in terms of a decision that you made?
Yeah. So,
because what I hear in that is some form, and you may be going to go into it, some form of rock bottom maybe. And as you said, those things look different for everyone. And sometimes we have to hit this version of it, like, shit is bad, something's got to change. So I'd love to hear what was in that moment for you.
Yeah, it came off of the eve of a lot of really grown-up circumstances at a extremely young age. I had 2 girls pregnant at that time. I was a high school dropout. I was addicted to alcohol to the point where I would go into the supermarket. I would fill up carts full of liquor with 50, 60 plus bottles. I would kick the emergency exit door open and run off with the alcohol. It was like I was on my way to, like, destitution. And as I'm sitting at that bus stop, I look over to my left, and there's a guy who's strung out on, like, crack or methamphetamine, and he looks just like me, but his eyes were like pitch black, like the whites in his eyes were no longer there. And something inside me activated. I felt chills up my whole entire body, and it was like, that's you. That's going to be you. You are on track to being this strung out crackhead that is rolling around on the ground in front of a bus stop, and you're going to let this city get the best of you. And at that time, I had so many people tell me I wasn't worth enough. I had so many
Mm.
coaches tell me I was a waste of talent. There was not many people at that time who said, maybe this kid is just going through a lot. Maybe the reason why he is
Mm.
falling asleep in class is not because he doesn't care, but because we're feeding him donuts and chocolate milk every morning for free lunch. Or
Mm.
maybe the reason why he's having anger issues is because his mom's going through mental illness and things like that. But nobody thought of that. It was just like,
Mm.
it's discarded. This kid is a waste of talent. And it's
Mm.
crazy, paradoxically, to like nowadays where I have thousands of people like, hey, you're amazing. Like, I love your work. There was once upon a time where nobody gave a fuck about me. And that
Yeah.
actually lasted for probably 10 to 15 years before anybody even like took notice to like my story or my journey.
Yeah.
But that right there, that moment was a vow with myself. It was me versus me. It was like,
Mm.
okay,
Mm.
listen, nobody's coming to save you, Brandon.
Mm.
Unfortunately, there's no knight in shining armor. There's no father. There's no trust fund. There's no
Mm.
lineage that is going to come save you. You got to save yourself. And the truth is, you probably are going to die trying, but like, why not at least try?
Yeah.
And in that trying, that's when it got magical. That's when the universe started opening up. That's when more men started appearing in my lives. They say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when micro wins started turning into macro wins. And a lot of people,
Nice.
when they hear about these micro wins, they think, well, yo, I'm going to hustle hard for a month or two and then everything's going to change.
Yeah.
It was actually like I hustled for 10 years before I even got out of the projects. But it was 10 years of intentional hustle, 10 years of
Mm.
watering this. And like literally on that 10th year was when like a new level of success sprouted.
Yeah. Wow. Huge. And what a decision. And as you say, like I was confronted with myself and like strangely, as you said, looking at this dude, like almost a version of yourself, like skipping forward into the future, right?
Yeah.
And what, as you said, a powerful vow. I think it's such a beautiful word because it just seems to encapsulate that so perfectly. So clearly, okay, 10 years of hustle and all the things that come into that. In that moment of vow, and like you might die doing this, what happens next? Because I imagine since that time you've had moments that aren't the same but represent something similar.
Yeah.
Backs against the wall, struggle. Because I know there's so many lessons in this for everyone. Like, what do you do next when it comes to, all right, shit's got to change?
So the very next step was bringing back that passion of reading that I talked about earlier.
Mm.
For some reason, I felt like salvation could happen through books and through
Yeah.
educating myself. I don't know why it was that. I don't exactly know why that intuition came over this like lost boy on the streets, but it was like, I'm really good at reading. And so maybe I need to lean into something I'm really good at and see where it takes me.
Yeah.
And that love for books took me into this military program called Job Corps, where you basically get put into these old military bunkers with all these boys, these lost boys from around the West Coast. There's like 200 of us in each dorm. And you have an opportunity to get back on track. You have an opportunity to get your GED. You have an opportunity to get your high school diploma and possibly a college credit. A lot of people don't realize, because when you watch the commercials, it's like all like, come to Job Corps. It's this amazing utopia. And you get up in there and it's like all these gangsters that are ready to like rip your head off. And so I got up there, man, and I'm like, the first week I get there, I'm in my dorm with two other random dudes. And I had a friend that went up there as well. And he almost got in a fight like the first week, and I broke up the fight. So I'm in my dorm room at like 11 p.m. at night, and three guys walk into my room. They shove the bed in front of my door, and they start to beat the shit out of me in my closet. And I got to fight for my life. And there, if you get in one fight, you're kicked out of the program.
Mm.
So after the fight, I have this huge hematoma on my leg and on my head. I have blood all over my t-shirt. I walk outside, it's snowing, and I just like scream at the top of my lungs. And I remember at that moment, there was this like laughter inside as well, because it was like the price of admission. Like if I can make
Yeah.
it through this streets, and I can make it through this. I can make it through anything. And so the next day, the RA comes to me and he's like, what happened to you? Were you in a fight? And I was like, no, I just fell. But that also gave me the motivation to like focus. And I got basically in this program, you're put on a military schedule. And I all of a sudden started seeing that through ritual and rhythm, I could succeed. I started seeing progress happening. I started seeing that when I'm organized with my thoughts, when I start my day intentionally, when I'm showing up to class, I'm actually pretty strong. When I'm sticking to a gym routine, and then all of a sudden, I got an opportunity there to take a college class. And I'm realizing that my love for books is translating into college. And I got my first college credit. I got a C. And I'm like, holy crap. I got all Fs in high school. I got a C in college. Maybe I'm smarter than they told me I am.
Yeah.
And it was like those little wins that just continued to compound over time that inevitably took me from being in the projects to my purpose.
Man, that sounds like some challenging situations, right? But I love how you dove into it. Even that laughter, right? That laughter of like, oh, this is the shit you've got for me, right? Like, okay, I got to face this. I got to get through this. So, there's plenty more we can talk about, but I'm really fascinated with this journey. Can you remember like what was going on in terms of kind of your, not necessarily your internal dialogue, but maybe like how you saw yourself and like what was possible for you? Like how was that evolving through that time?
Yeah. So my mom, she failed in a lot of ways and she hit home runs in so many other ways. One of the things I never questioned was, did my mother love me? Not saying she didn't know how to love me, because she was messed up in a lot of ways, but she loved me the best she could. And she wrote me every day when I was in Job Corps a letter, a handwritten letter. Sometimes she was writing me from the homeless shelter. Sometimes she was writing me from literally having no home. Sometimes she was writing me as she was getting evicted, and she was just reminding me that I was her baby boy and that I mattered. And sometimes that's all we need is just one person to believe in us. That's it. And that person was her, and that belief instilled a belief in me. One of the funny story I talk about is when I was young, my mom had one rule for me. It wasn't like clean your room. It wasn't like, be home on time. The rule was if anybody had a problem with me, I was to tell them that I don't have to listen to them. They have to talk to my mom. And this included teachers. This included adults. It was like, this was like a recipe for straight anarchy. And that's carried over into like my life. But as I'm going through this journey, I realized like, I don't care what anybody thinks of me. If they have a problem, they have to talk to my mom because my mom believes in me. And that gave me the freedom to take some bold risks and believe in myself. And in that process, when people see that you're actually trying your best, they want to help, they want to support. All the time I get asked by people like, yo, how do I find a great mentor? Well, oftentimes some of the best mentors in the world are accessible if you just show up and you're doing your absolute best. Like that's really what started to happen was as I started to believe in myself, people started to believe in me more. And the places where I didn't believe in myself, people started appearing that helped me instill that belief in myself, that inevitably helped me level up to another level. And so I don't think any of us do it alone. We absolutely need community, as we talk about so deeply in our men's group. We need elders. We need way showers. We need chiefs to help us, especially as young men, walk the path. And so I've been really fortunate to have a lot of people help instill in me a deep belief in myself over the last 20 years.
Yeah, beautiful. Which is clearly been, like that symbiotic relationship of, like you doing some work and seeing some stuff and some feedback and then like struggling here, but people remind you and invite you into it and like, the beauty of it, right? And I think one of the things that I hear in that as well is, whilst like by the sound of it, a lot of your experience, there was a lot of, like lone wolfing in a sense of like, I got to get through this. Like there's some support around me, but this is me in the wardrobe, getting the shit kicked out of you and all those pieces, right? But at the same time, like it's not a thing we do alone. There's other
Right.
people we need. They play a part. Shit, sometimes it might be for a moment, but it matters. All those pieces, and that can help how we see ourselves, how we view ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, what we see is possible for us.
Absolutely.
Man, I'm sure we could step through a lot more of that. But where I want to go to now is, okay, so where does that bring you now? Like, I know physically you're in Thailand, I know that there's some context around you and a home, or perhaps not having any, but like now in your life, where are you? What are you doing? And, go into all of that for us.
So 10 years to get out of the projects. And in that 10 years, I went from being a high school dropout to eventually those first 10 years, graduating from with my master's in psychology, opening my first chain of gyms, and becoming a prolific trainer in Las Vegas, and then eventually becoming a traveling trainer globally. The next 10 years, the next 5 years after that, 2012 to 2017, was the chapter of like, what does success look like in a material sense? All the things I thought I wanted when I grew up, all of a sudden I had the gym, I had the money, I had the status, but I didn't have the tools necessarily to handle the success. A lot of people think that once they get successful, all of a sudden everything's going to be healed. And a lot of times success does it. It just amplifies and showcases the wounds. And if you're not healed, it's just going to bring to the surface all of the vices. And so 2012 to 2016, 17 was a time of like big material success at that time in my eyes, but also a realization that I had a lot of traumas that I never addressed. Things like abandonment wounds, savior complexes, codependency, love addictions, all of these things. And so 2017, 2016 is when I really started to dive deep into yoga. This is when I really started to dive deep into plant medicine. So when I started really diving deep into like more self-work. And that's when I walked away from everything that was quote unquote small me, my success in Vegas, my status as a trainer, into the unknown, into the wild, into that journey of like, okay, I have the tools now. It's time to step into the real hero's journey. And been where I've been the last 6 years. And so you say like, where do you live? I'm not a like grungy backpacker nomad. I'm like a really high level nomad that like functionally moves. I'm a bougie nomad, but that's how it's been the last 6 years. 32 years I grinded and I didn't move. In the last 6 years, I've been moving and the world has been my home. And in that process, what I discovered was my self-worth. And oh my God, like when I finally understood.
Hey, a quick interruption from me on this one. I'll keep it brief, I promise. And that's this. If you want to hear more from me, not only the deeper content where I go into some stories and some examples and some real education and depth, right? I love these podcasts, but we can go into depth. And that is in my weekly email newsletter, Mic Drops. That's what I call it. That's where I drop the mic and I drop all of my knowledge, my own stories, how I navigate shit, the stories of men that I work with and these things in my life to support you in getting your best, getting past your shit and getting more from life, love, and the everyday. So wherever you find this podcast, find the link, subscribe to the newsletter, and I'll see you in there soon. And by the way, that's where you can interact with me directly. Just reply to emails and we can have a conversation. All right, back to the episode.
And oh my God, like when I finally understood that everything comes back to us just seeing ourselves as worth it, the quality of our relationships, the quality of our finances, the quality of our connection, the quality of our health, when we're standing in our worth, it opens up the doors. It took me 38 years, 37 years to truly finally start to love myself, truly. And that was the greatest gift I could have ever given myself. And so the last couple years has been a really deep dive into just loving myself as I am. And, I posed a few questions to our men's group of, can I love the parts of myself that I deem most unlovable? Can I love myself like there's nothing to fix? And can I celebrate the parts of me that nobody celebrates? And that's really been my work, is to say yes to all those. Can I really love myself And in that space, but it's crazy, when I walked away from the gyms, when I walked away from this success, I thought everything was going to fall apart. And what happened is because I chose to stay true to my truth and true to my authenticity, it actually amplified everything. My ties with Nike went deeper. My opportunities in the speaking world became more pronounced. My business endeavors all became more pronounced because they were coming from a place of true authenticity and self-worth rather than lack, ego, and me trying to fill a void. And so that's where I am right now, is just I've landed in a place of play. I think that's what it is. It's been 20 plus years to get back to a place of actually being able to play.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it sounds cliche perhaps, but the world is a playground at the moment. Like you're a man of the world.
Yeah.
You're moving around and you're doing the things.
Exactly.
What that you know, landing by the sound of it, of like, whew, like, you know, like I have self-worth. I see it. I understand it. I know it. You know, what I'm hearing in that kind of period that you described, kind of certainly the hustle perhaps, and then like the 2012, you know, things shifting and success happening, and you know, it sounds like there was an element in that of this stuff makes who I am. You know, these external pieces, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of us might chase. And as you said, like I imagine from the projects and the growing up, they seem to be anyway, like they're glorified, like all these things. I can see how that might have had more of or perhaps a new depth to it. So what shifts for you in terms of seeing you and the worth and the value that you have to the world? What shifts to make that?
Yeah, it was
just a tiny bit different, wholly different, or land in this new place?
Oh, it was completely different, but I had to see what it looked like at first. All the, you know, growing up in the projects, you idolize like rappers, you idolize athletes, you idolize celebrities. You know, before I was, you know, quote unquote, a, you know, prolific trainer, I had to stand in line at the club and I would never be in the VIP area. And then 2012, 2016, all of a sudden I'm in the VIP areas. All of a sudden, women that I never thought would talk to me were talking to me. All of a sudden, alcohol that I could never afford was just being given to me. All of a sudden, this idea of doing drugs that I never thought I would do, all of a sudden it felt tempting to do these drugs. And the next thing you know, like I'm spending $2,000 on a blazer that I only wore once, or because I didn't have Nikes when I was growing up, you know, via my contract with Nike, I got 200 plus Nikes. And there was a realization in like 2015, 16, where I'm sitting on my balcony and I'm like, I'm more miserable now than when when I was on the streets. I'm sitting in this beautiful condo. I have my gym. I have everything. And I'm like, I feel like absolute shit. And that was a red flag again. And this is one thing I want to just like celebrate about myself is I've learned at a young age that anytime I feel off, I should do something to change it. It's a sign. And so that's when I decided to go to Bali. And I went to Bali and I took a yoga class. And after the yoga class, the yoga teacher comes up to me and she laughs at me. She's like, you're like pure bravado. And I was like, what? She's like, you got it all figured out on the outside, but on the inside, you have no fucking clue what's going on. And shout out to Denise Payne, but she checked me. And she said, you need yoga. And I was like, yeah, I need yoga. And so yoga became like this.
So you were able to receive that piece of feedback?
Oh yeah. Because I needed it. I was there seeking something. I was empty. Yeah. There was something missing. And I realized like I'm outsourcing my worth. But that's a hard thing to like let go of when you've made it in society's eyes, right? When you have a whole community, when you have not just one gym, but like I had 4 gyms at my pinnacle. When you had like all this status, to eventually walk away from that. That's what I did. I walked away from everything, burnt to the ground, literally. It was like, it wasn't like, oh, like namaste, yo, peace. It was like inferno firebomb. Everything just burnt because like when I was out, I was out. And full circle, I went broke. I went broke in 2019. I went broke in 2020. I got sued from my business partners because I personally guaranteed the lease on my second gym for upwards of $650,000. And when we closed down, I got left with that lease and the courts judged against me. Like, I lost everything to gain everything. And that therein was the lesson. It was like, first, God was like, here, I'm going to show you what it feels like to have success. And then I'm going to show you what it feels like to have nothing. And if you really tune in that nothingness, you actually have everything. Isn't that a trip? And that's really what I built the last 3 years off of, is like, you know what? I was completely broke. I had $14 left to my name during 2020 COVID. My last meal with those $14 was, I went to 7-Eleven and got like some Cheetos and like some like cookies, like no fronting, no lying. I was depressed. I'm like, I need to eat something that's like a comfort food. And then I asked myself in that place, if I can show the universe right now that I'm abundant enough to serve first, I wonder what's possible. And that's what I asked. When I finally hit rock bottom, at my lowest, everything that I built was stripped away. I went broke because I walked away from my company's accounts frozen. Girlfriend broke up with me, everything. I asked God, I said, how can I serve? And that was the moment where the universe was like, okay, he gets it. And everything since then has been like warp speed. But it came from a place of like, I am enough first. By being alive, by being here, by being me, by being with my breath. Like, I am enough as is. And everything else is an extension or a bonus of that. But I am not held captive by anything that is outside of me, outside of love, outside of truth, and outside of service to others. And so that's been the last couple of years, is like standing on that foundation of I am enough as is. And it's the most sustainable space I've ever been in.
So it sounds solid, right? And I've had the pleasure of knowing you at that time, and I see it. So then you come to this, mission that you've shared, which is like, love is my mission. So can you kind of, like, go into that a little bit for us? How do you get to this piece? What is that even? And beyond like who and how you be, are there other ways in which you bring this to life? Like, I know you run your retreats, for example.
Of course. Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about a mission is that it's all encompassing. I think that when you truly have a mission, it's not just like, oh, I turn on my mission at 9:00 a.m. and I turn off my mission at 5 p.m. And my mission is like on when I'm with my friends, but it's off when I'm with my family. I think when a person truly has a mission, it is all encompassing. And what a beautiful way to live when we're living from a space of devotion. And a true mission doesn't mean that it's like exclusive or that we have to push people out. A true mission brings everybody in our world that matters to us into our mission as well. They get to be a part of that mission. But we have to know what that mission is. And I really didn't know what my mission was for so many years. For so many years, my mission was just trying to feel something, feel worth it, feel like I was worthy, feel like I was valuable. And then I had the honor of dating this little spicy Venezuelan that I met in a coffee shop in Peru. I picked her up on Google Translate and she became my girlfriend. And then a year later, she broke up with me and she was like, I'm out. And I'm like, how are you going to break up with me? Do you know who I am? I'm Brandon Collinsworth. And she was like, I don't even care. You don't show up. You're not present. And I've never felt a part of your mission. Do you even know what your mission is? And I was in Copacabana, Brazil when she broke up with me. And I remember just thinking like, I don't even really know what my mission is. This is 2020. This is 2019. And I said, what is it that everybody wants? Everybody wants love. Doesn't matter where you go in the world. Everybody wants love. And then I asked myself, what are legacies built off of? Like, who do we truly remember? We don't remember Bruce Lee's Nike collection. We don't remember Muhammad Ali's net worth. We don't remember Dr. Martin Luther King's bank account,
Yeah.
we know that they left legacies of love. And so that's when I declared, like, okay, love is my mission. And I don't even know what that looks like, but it sounds like the most worthwhile endeavor to go after, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money we have, doesn't matter who we are, what we are, we all want love. And that's when I declared that. I want to understand love fully. Now, when a lot of people see love as my mission, they see it as like, okay, well, is this a humanitarian endeavor? And that is part of it. But it's also like, love is my mission to like truly love myself in a world that is, imposed so much inferiority complexes on us. To really love ourselves is like, what a mission that is. If that was the only mission, that's enough. But this mission has become multifaceted, and it's something I've really stood on. The crazy thing is I believe when we truly declare our mission, the universe throws everything at us to test if we really want that mission.
Yeah. Oh, you think you do you? Let me see.
As soon as I declared love is my mission, it was like, oh, you want love is your mission. There's been so many times where I'm like, man, I need to take love is my mission off of my Instagram because I'm not feeling like this is the right mission right now. This is hard. But it's truly.
Yeah, but then so is love, right? Like love ain't always just rainbows and unicorn farts. Like there's challenge in that, there's difficulty in that, there's suffering in that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's what gives height to it as well.
Exactly. To know love, we have to know everything that is not love. And that was the caveat that they didn't show me the small fine print when I declared love is my
yeah, right. Like sign here.
Signed it, and that's been the catalyzer over the last few years, and it's just been beautiful, man. It's broken me, it's humbled me, it's softened me, and it's opened me to so much love, not only deeper levels of friendship, relationship, but also like really high quality brothers and men in my life that would have never come had I not stripped away the hardened exterior and like started opening my heart to allowing you to come in all forms.
Yeah, well, shit. I mean, back to the earlier piece, like this is how I got to know you, right? Somehow you entered the orbit of Mark Groves, as some of us do, and others, right? But he was certainly the conduit to me meeting you and bringing you into our men's group and so on. And then I've watched you and observe you and interact with you, and it's a joy to do that. And I see the embodiment of this mission, no doubt. And I know one of the things that you do inside of your business, because you got different hats, is you run these warrior retreats down in Peru. Can you talk us through like the genesis and kind of what that is for you?
Yeah, warrior retreats. It's mystical in so many ways. A lot of people.
You can leave it there. All right, everyone.
When I was 27 years old, I was wrapping up my senior year at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and my professor was doing a documentary at a local high school called Valley High School. And I remember my mom told me that she met my father at Valley High School and that they went to the same high school. And so I brought up to him, I said, I think my father and mom met there. And he looks at me and he goes, is your dad named Lane Rowling? That happened to be my father. Come to find out, his big brother was best friends with my father. That night, he called my father for the first time. My father called me, and come to find out, my father is an infectious disease researcher, doctor, living in the Amazon jungle. So in 2012, I'm deep into my work on forgiveness. I'm deep into my work on like surrendering, letting go. And I decided to go down to the jungles of Peru, and I started spending 1 to 2 months a year down in the jungles working with my father and redeveloping our relationship down there, which is crazy. 2016, as I started to really transcend and leave behind small me to step into my truth, I had this call to share Peru with some friends. I called up 2 friends. I said, Peru is incredible. I know you're trying to like work with those plant medicines out in LA, but like if you really want to work with the plant medicines, you got to come down to Peru. Next thing you know, I had 22 people coming down to Peru. And that was the birth of Warrior. And it started as a 6-day retreat, which morphed into a 9-day retreat, which turned into an 11-day retreat, which eventually turned into a 14-day, 4-container retreat that starts in the Amazon jungle, goes to Cusco, ends up in Aguas Caliente, Machu Picchu, and then the Sacred Valley. And what I realized was that without knowing it, I was creating my own initiatory rite of passage. It was like my soul knew it needed something, an encounter with the unknown, as Francis Weller would say. It needed something to catalyze me. And it knew it needed, my soul knew that the people in my life needed that as well. And so what Warrior had become is, what it's become is it's way more than a retreat. It's truly a rite of passage. And the foundation of it is rooted in service. You know, a lot of people talk about ayahuasca. I always say that the most powerful psychedelic you could ever take is life ayahuasca. Like all you got to do is open up your eyes and take part in life. And that's the true medicine. And I realized that just as powerful as somebody doing a sacred plant medicine ceremony is somebody going in the hospital and sitting with a 5-year-old kid as he takes his last breath and he's smiling to the end. And that's really what Peru has become. Warrior has become this contained encounter with the unknown, rooted in love. And I always have asked myself, how do I leave Peru better than I found it? It's never been about money with Peru. It's been about service to humanity and service to my fellow brothers and sisters. And in that space, it's turned from a, just like a mom and pop boutique retreat experience to, as of this last one, we have 3,000 people on the wait list for 12 spots. And it's truly calling people from all around the world who are all looking for their own initiations. And I think that is the testament of these times, is like, Francis Weller so eloquently speaks about suspended adolescence and the fact that we never had these initiatory practices into adulthood. Like, we are desperately looking for sacred containers that will hold us to the fires as we transcend from our youth into a more refined eldership state. And my whole life has truly been that journey. So Warrior is my life's journey, really condensed into a 14-day experience.
Yeah, I love it. That's and like, so as you said, so needed. We can often be wandering, and it might look like we're not. It might look like we put on our suit and we put on our gears and we go to work and we've got the things and we've got the house and we've got the relationship and all the things, right? And that's one of those common things I hear from so many guys. Man, if you look at my life on the outside, it looks sorted together, awesome, but on the inside there's something totally different a lot of the times. There's something missing, there's something lacking. I can't put my finger on it. And often we haven't made that transition from who I was and as an adolescent, which is a fucking wild time. Some of us more wild than others. But if you think about, the separation from our parents is essentially happening there. And how do we understand what the fuck that even is? How? Like, what do we do? Where are we going? I mean, I have an idea that I'm going to become an adult, but then often along with that is this idea that when you become an adult, which we still don't know exactly when that is, we name it something like 18 years of age biologically.
Right.
You're an adult. That's it. Right? As if growth doesn't continue until you become an old person and potentially, you're in the ground. It's a continual evolution. And so we can end up wondering, right? And what we haven't got is those powerful pieces that, as you said, they transform us and translate us from one stage to another, boy to man in a simple sense. And providing those opportunities, those containers, and I think as well, bringing some groundedness to, from what I'm hearing in there a little bit, something that's very popular now, which is I'm going to go fuck with plant medicine, and doesn't necessarily have the reverence or the deep respect for what that is. Like, if you're getting high on these things over here, and I'm just going to do it with something else over here because it's popular and it feels like it's maybe got a different element to it. It's the intentionality behind it is very different, right? And that's what I sense deeply in the work that you're doing in Warrior.
100%. It's interesting because as human beings, we want that magic pill. We want for those who've seen Limitless, the ZMT, where all of a
Yes.
sudden it's the brain's fully activated, or that instant enlightenment, and everybody's chasing like the level skip, the down forward back C Mortal Kombat code to skip to black belt. And the
Yeah.
truth is, like, there's no skips to black belt. It
Yeah.
comes years and years of refining who it is we are. And plant medicine, what it does is it might give you a glimpse of what black belt may look like, but until your soma integrates the lessons, when we talk about it from like a tribal standpoint, from a man becoming, or a boy turning into a man to becoming a chief, he doesn't get to skip the process. He has to, through trial and error, through mistakes, through failures, through loss, through understanding, through pain, through learning, through years of dedication and devotion, he eventually arrives to mastery of self. And that's the thing that I think so many people are trying to skip. And this is the thing that I always say at Warrior is, like, if you're coming to Warrior and thinking that this is the red pill and all of a sudden you're going to just wake up and you're there, that's not it. But if you're ready to open up the doors to a lifelong journey of devotion and mastery to yourself, this is the process. And this might not be for you, because once you open those doors, it's hard. And so I'm really adamant about checking people, especially those that I coach with, that think that there's a master pill that just changes it all. And I also feel a sense of responsibility, because I feel like a lot of money is made exploiting people on this idea of like instant enlightenment rather than work. Therein lies the beauty. Therein lies the process. Therein lies why it's important to have an incredible coach, like what you do and what like Mark does and everything, is like to have somebody to go along with you, like D'Amato and Tyson, or some of the Teddy Atlas and some of his athletes, or my senseis out here in Thailand, to step by step help us up level our octaves and our somatic intelligence to a point where we can carry a higher level of frequency that is rooted in leadership and love.
Yeah. There's no skipping, right?
No skipping.
There's things that, but at the same time, you know, there's also, because we often have glorified, certainly for men, right? We kind of alluded to it earlier, the lone wolf. Like, you have to just really fucking grind it out, and like you do. And there's codes, right, that can help, but it still work, right?
Yeah.
Using mentors and people who have different eyes and lived experiences and other things is so valuable. Like, you don't have to sit in a corner and go, I'm going to try and figure this all out myself. But yeah, you're not going to skip to the top of the mountain just by fucking wishing it, right?
Yeah, it's like you can go to the top of the mountain and you can, like, you could be a lone wolf, and that's going to be foolish, because you're not going to realize that you need oxygen when you get to like base camp 1, and that there's a glacier pit that's going to like eat you alive if you go left, and that you could actually hire a Sherpa to help you like carry some of your luggage. That's the power of mentors. That's the power of aligning with people who have walked the path before you. And so I always love the quote. I've always loved the quote by Frederick Douglass, where he says, I prayed for my freedom for 20 years, but nothing changed until I started praying with my legs. And what I love about that is this idea of praying with your legs means that you have faith that the resources, that the spiritual realm, that the universe has got your back, but you're also not sitting back idly waiting for a free handout. You're actually walking towards it as it's walking towards you. And eventually it's in that meeting point, I believe, where we activate our highest potential again and again and again.
I love it. Yeah, it's like, it reminds me of, I've probably mentioned it on this podcast before, there's an African proverb that I love. It's, I build the road and the road builds me. You know, and again, for me, I think that can mean a lot of things, but for me, it's like I do the things, I take the actions, and I grow, and then I become who I become in the process, right? But I can't just sit there and hope that it'll happen. Build the road for me. It's like, that shit's not happening. So, you know, we're coming to our time, and maybe we're venturing around this point now, but I'm interested to ask, because, you know, you're one of these dudes who's like, man, you've been to these places and you've got these stories, and, you know, you got these connections, and you're so, and I understand why, right? Because of who you are at your core. And I think as you said, we're in a time where a lot of things are offered, and sometimes they are, the shortcut to the black belt. In this age that we have, in this kind of like, maybe even the glorification of, consciousness and the conscious community. What are the things that get to you, that piss you off, that irritate you when it comes to what people are maybe being sold, or that is certainly
Yeah.
floating around out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been
Drop
thinking
you in
about
it.
I got
I want
like
the soundbite, bro.
I got like Tupac and Biggie beef with like some of the people in the conscious community. Like if I could write like a diss record, I would actually like straight up drop a diss album on some of these guys. But to keep it more G rated, I would say that I truly believe with great power comes great responsibility. I believe that the ego loves to accessorize itself in mala beads, mantras, mudras, white shawls, and namastes in love. And I think embodiment is the true testament of the teachings. Theory is easy. A lot of people theorize. It's easy to regurgitate through Instagram all the wisdom and knowledge that you say you have, but embodiment is key. Embodiment is walking the walk. Embodiment at its core is integrity. Integrity is being who you are in public, or being who you are in private the same way you are in public. There's a seamlessness to it. And I think that in this space of all these thousands, hundreds of thousands of coaches coming online saying that they have a quick fix to your salvation, a quick fix to your success, I think that it's really important to make sure that you're working with people that truly are embodied in what they are speaking of, that they're truly embodied in their teachings, they're truly embodied in what they're sharing with the world.
How do you think people explore that and figure it out?
Yeah, I
Sorry to
think
cut you off.
I think that it's really important to one trial and error. You're gonna get burned a couple times, and like that just happens. But I truly believe that when you're loving yourself, when you're doing the work, when you are truly embodying and being the best you can be, that becomes a powerful filter that filters out a lot of bullshit. Like at its foundational level,
it becomes easier to align, right? And know what aligns.
Exactly. And to add to that, I would say that anybody who tries to convince you that your salvation is outside of yourself, run the other way. Anybody who tries to convince you that they have the master key, master class to your healing, run the other way. A true master, a true sensei, a true master coach is there to shine light into what's already there in you. And if they're really good, you'll eventually not need them, or it'll be a choice to keep them in your life as an amplifier, not a crutch. So it really starts again and again with our inner work. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, like really standing in a space of self-worth. For example, the men's group that I'm in with Mike, these guys are some of the best in the world. These guys have grilled me on more occasions than I can even count and called me forward. And because of that, because of my own personal alignment, I attracted these individuals who are living from integrity, living from truth, and standing in love. And that's what I just want to reemphasize one more time is like we attract to what we are. So if you're calling in high level coach, if you're calling in high level love, if you're calling in high level opportunities, like all you have to do is align yourself and know that that's the most potent and powerful filter you can possibly embody. That's the most potent and powerful filter that you can possibly enable.
That's it, man. I love that. I was like, I got a bunch of other questions, but I'm pretty sure that was like so on point.
Love
right?
it, bro.
And like whatever it is, the answers aren't always out there. They're in here. And that was like, that was it right there. Brandon, thank you so much for your time, for your generosity, sharing your story. I think everyone listening can hear like, holy shit, this dude's been through some stuff. And guess what? You haven't even heard, I think, that fucking half of it, because I've heard some of the other stories. So I have so much gratitude for you and, who you are and how you show up in the world. And I know that you embody that mission. It's a joy to talk with you and be in relationship with you. Brandon, thank you for coming on the podcast. You absolute legend.
Love you, brother. Let's continue to shine our light and be the change. Appreciate each and every one of you listening. Stay in touch. And just remember, you got everything you need inside. Just tune in.
Absolutely. And as always, we'll get all the information about Brandon, put it on the websites, wherever you listen to this, you can track him down and get in touch.
You've been listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to championing everyday men and supporting you in getting more from life, love, and the everyday. If this podcast has benefited you, if you enjoyed this, then my invitation is to share this with a man that you think will also benefit from this and enjoy this. Remember, please, wherever you find your podcast, you like us, subscribe to us, click download first, leave us a review. All those things both make sure you get all the updates when they come in, and it supports us in getting this podcast in front of more everyday men that could use it. Until next time, I've been Mike Campbell. Remember to build that legendary integrity. And remember, everyday men, we thrive when we are championed, when we are supported, when we are appreciated and recognized for who we choose to be in the world. Here is my invitation to both show up and be that everyday legend, and to continue to champion the everyday men in your life.